rain in New York City had that cold, metallic smell that only appeared after midnight. Street lights reflected in long golden streaks across the wet asphalt as taxis hissed past puddles, and distant sirens echoed somewhere downtown. It was the kind of night when the city never truly slept, only shifted its breathing. Lena Whitaker barely noticed any of it. Her gloved fingers tapped softly on the steering wheel as she waited at a red light on First Avenue, the windshield wipers sweeping rhythmically across the glass. The dashboard clock glowed 10:47 p.m. Night shift again. She didn't mind them. Hospitals were quieter after dark. Fewer administrators, fewer families asking questions, fewer interruptions between her and the work she loved. The patients seemed calmer too, like the world outside had finally stopped shouting. Then the world exploded. Headlights. Blinding. Too fast. Lena barely had time to gasp before a massive SUV blasted through a red light from the cross street. The impact came from her left side like a cannon. Metal screamed. Glass burst inward in a storm of glittering shards. Her car spun violently across the slick pavement, the seatbelt cutting into her shoulder as the vehicle slammed sideways into the guardrail. Then silence. Rain tapped against the shattered windshield. For a moment Lena couldn't breathe. Her ears rang. Pain radiated through her ribs. She tried to move. Couldn't. Something warm ran down the side of her face. Blood. Her vision blurred. Sirens began in the distance, faint at first, then growing louder. How ironic, she thought dimly. The nurse becoming the patient. Her head sagged against the seat. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed everything was the flashing red glow of emergency lights reflecting across the rain. And then, nothing. Cold air. The smell of antiseptic. Voices. Another one waking up. A woman's voice. Sharp. Firm. Lena's eyelids fluttered open. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, painted white but cracked slightly at the corners. A spinning metal fan hung overhead, clicking softly as it rotated. Confused, she tried to sit up. Pain shot through her shoulder. Easy there, nurse, the voice said again. Lena turned her head. A tall woman in a crisp white uniform stood beside the bed. The uniform looked old. Really old. Where am I? She croaked. You're at the Army Nurse Training Barracks, Miss Whitaker. Lena's stomach dropped. Army? What year is it? The woman frowned. It's March of 1941, she said. The words hit like another car crash. 1941. Her pulse thundered in her ears. This had to be a dream. But the air smelled real. The rough cotton uniform felt real. You and the others volunteered to become combat nurses. Combat nurses. A chill crept down her spine. Because deep inside, beneath the confusion and fear, one horrifying realization was beginning to form. She hadn't survived the crash. She had fallen straight through time. And somehow, she had landed at the beginning of a war. The bugle echoed across the compound. On your feet, ladies. The room burst into motion. Lena forced herself to swing her legs over the bed. Yes, Mom. Line up. She stepped into formation beside the others. A blonde girl beside her leaned slightly closer. You all right? You fainted pretty hard earlier. I did. Right during the orientation speech. Betty Collins. From Ohio. Lena Whitaker. My name is Lieutenant Margaret Caldwell, the stern nurse announced. You are the newest class of the Army Nurse Corps training program. You will learn battlefield triage, surgical preparation, infection control, trauma stabilization. You will train here until you are deemed ready. Miss Whitaker. Yes, Mom. You were previously employed at a hospital in New York City, correct? Yes. Good. Then perhaps you will embarrass yourself less than the others. Training yard. Move. Lena stepped outside and stopped short. The world looked older. No skyscrapers. No distant hum of modern traffic, just the sound of wind and marching boots. This was real. Betty nudged her arm. You sure you're okay? I just didn't sleep much. My brother said nurses in Europe barely sleep at all. Europe. Because she knew something Betty didn't. In 9 months, everything would change. Today you begin with trauma drills. Who wants to demonstrate first aid procedures? No one stepped forward. I can do it. Very well, Miss Whitaker. Show us. First I check responsiveness. So, can you hear me? Yes, Mom. Good. Next step is controlling blood loss immediately. And how do you plan to do that? She wrapped the cloth tightly around the soldier's thigh. Then she grabbed a small metal rod. She twisted, the fabric tightened rapidly. Hold still. She secured the rod in place. Silence spread across the training yard. It's a pressure tourniquet, she explained. You tighten until arterial bleeding stops. Continue. Next I monitor for shock. She elevated the soldier's feet slightly. Keep blood circulating to vital organs. Check airway and breathing. Breathing is clear. Cleaning around the wound area before dressing it. You clean wounds after bandaging them. Bacteria causes infection. Cleaning first reduces contamination. She finished. Bleeding controlled. Patient stabilized for transport. You've done that before. Yes, Mom. You will demonstrate that technique again this afternoon, and tomorrow, you will meet with the medical training officers. A cold knot formed in Lena's stomach. She had just demonstrated medical knowledge that shouldn't exist in March 1941. Miss Whitaker, the major said. I'm Major Robert Halstead. Lieutenant Caldwell tells me you demonstrated some unusual medical techniques. I was just trying to stop the bleeding, sir. But the method you used isn't part of any current Army medical training manual. Where did you learn that? Emergency department. You twisted the tourniquet with a rod to increase pressure. Yes, sir. Why? To stop arterial bleeding faster. You also elevated the patient's legs to counter shock. Yes. And cleaning the wound before bandaging it. You seem to have a strong understanding of trauma stabilization, Miss Whitaker. I've seen a lot of injuries. If a soldier were suffering from severe infection after surgery, what would you recommend? Broad-spectrum antibiotics. Such as penicillin. Interesting. Most nurses wouldn't mention that yet. I read about it in a medical journal. Well, whatever your sources may be, your instincts are excellent. We would like you to assist with some of our advanced training demonstrations. Your techniques may improve the efficiency of battlefield treatment. We would like you to help train the other nurses. Lena stared at the paper. Train them, teach them techniques from the future. If she accepted this, she could save lives. What do you say, Miss Whitaker? She slowly picked up the paper. I'll help, she said. Captain Sullivan watched her carefully. Good, he said, but there was something thoughtful in his eyes. As Lena left the building, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Sullivan hadn't fully believed her answers. And if he started digging deeper, he might discover the impossible truth that the young nurse now training soldiers in 1941 already knew how the war would end.